Hey everyone, this is Nikachu, and I'm here with my Grand Prix San Antonio deck list for the Team Unified Modern GP coming up this weekend. And I posted a tweet, and I think I also put it on my Facebook page, but I felt like the list had a bit of a flaw. So I have just a slightly revised version. And for any of you that do not follow me on Facebook and Twitter, which you should, here's the list right now that you can see going into this weekend. Merfolk is a very interesting addition to anyone's team because almost all the cards in the deck don't rub against anyone else's feathers against anyone else's deck. And if somehow they do, you can always find a way around it. So one thing you have to understand is Merfolk is awkward because Affinity is also a very good choice to be on anyone's team. Affinity, of course, not a very good matchup for us. Also, Lantern Control can be on anyone's team. You know, as long as no one's using Ancient Stirrings or maybe the Thoughtseize effects, that Lantern Control deck is very powerful. And for that reason, we gotta be playing with Hurkyl's Recall. Hurkyl's Recall in the sideboard. For Hurkyl's Recall, usually you see me, I hate Hurkyl's Recall. You know what? I don't think you can dodge Affinity in this type of in this type of field. You have to expect to play against Affinity, and for that reason, we're going to play with for Hurkyl's Recall. This list is basically built to beat generic deck lists, Death Shadow, Affinity, and the Mirror. You have to be prepared for the Mirror because there will be a decent chunk of Merfolk decks out there. So it has been designed specifically to beat all those decks, or hopefully beat all those decks. So going through it, the mana base is going to be 10 islands, 4 Mutavault. We're going to play an Oboro, 1 Minamo. You could play without any Cavern of Souls. That's no problem. You can play with 4 Wanderwine Hub, and I'm going to play with 3 Wanderwine Hub. I want to play with as many non-basic lands as possible without going overboard. I don't like to play more than 10 non-basic lands. We're going to do this for the Merfolk Mirror. You will see Merfolk at this type of GP. Merfolk is a very good list to have on anyone's team. So I do think you want to play with a decent chunk of non-basic lands. So yeah, we're gonna play with the 3 Wanderwine Hubs. And I don't want to play with too many Cavern of Souls because we're going to be playing with Vapor Snag, and we're also going to be playing with Hurkyl's Recall, and we do not want to mana screw ourselves on blue mana against either of those decks. It could be completely fatal. You know, when you're mana screwed against slower decks, who cares? Because you can slowly draw your way out of it. So, I mean, if I have a bunch of Cavern of Souls in my deck against Control, and I have a bunch of Dispels, and there's a bunch of brown mana on the board, I don't mind, because if we just wait a bunch of turns, I'll eventually hit that island, and then that Dispel is turned on. But hey, you can't wait forever for that island against Affinity. You need to have blue mana. So I'm only on 1 Cavern of Souls, and I don't even know how popular Control would be at Team Unified Modern. We're going to play with normal Cursecatcher, Silvergills, the full-on Lords for Master of the Pearl Trident, and Lord of Atlantis. We're going to play with 4 Harbinger of the Tides because that card is very good against Affinity and Merfolk, and apparently it's pretty decent against Death Shadow. I've looked over enough games, and I've heard enough opinions that, you know, Harbinger is probably where you want to be against Death Shadow. Tempoing them out is possible. 3 Merrow Reejerey, good against Affinity, great against Merfolk, good against like generic combo decks as well. We're gonna go with Kira, Great Glass Spinner. I don't know how popular combo would be that we would want Vendilion Click, but I know for sure that Kira is where we want to be against Death Shadow, and I do think we want as much help as possible against that matchup. We're still gonna play with the full force of Master of Waves. We're going to play with 3 Vapor Snag because Vapor Snag is good against all the matchups that I just talked about. Death Shadow, Merfolk, Affinity, and it's still very good in general. It's good against Control. It's good against a lot of things. Vapor Snag is just probably a little bit better against Eldrazi Tron and normal Jund and Abzan. You want to be killing those creatures, but aside from that, Vapor Snag, very good against pretty much everything else. Or better against everything else. In the sideboard, we're going to play with 2 Dispels, 2 Unified Wills, 2 Relic of Progenitus, and so we get to the 4 Hurkyl's Recall. I'll continue. We're going to have a 3rd Cure Great Glass Spinner. We're going to make sure we send Death Shadow a message. We're going to play with 3 Seize Claim because I needed to make room for 1 Dismember that we could bring in. Oh, well, this is for the Mirror. The thing is, in the mirror, you want to take out 2 Spreading Seas, and there's just nothing here to bring in except for Kira. And I took out a Seas Claim for one more thing, so maybe this should just be Vapor Snag, because Vapor Snag is just better than Dismember. But Dismember can still bring... Well, I mean, Dismember is fine against a lot of other stuff. Yeah, Dismember is fine. Okay, Dismember is just playable. Just play with Dismember. So that's the reason for the change. It used to have 4 Seas Claim, but I'm now going to make it 3 Seas Claim, 1 Dismember, so that we can side out at least 2 Spreading Seas against the mirror. I don't want to have 3 Spreading Seas in against the mirror, even though, I think that's perfectly fine. So going back to Hurkyl's Recall, I think we do want Hurkyl's Recall for Lantern Control and Affinity. I think those things are going to be in full force. However, if you don't want to go down that route, you could play with a bunch of gut shots. Here's the thing. In the Team Unified Modern that was at the World Cup, there was a lot of Infect. There was a ton of Infect. But the thing is, that was before the bannings. I have no idea. I have no clue how popular Infect is going to be this weekend. Infect is not dead. Infect is a perfectly playable deck in Modern. People could be bringing Infect. So it's up to you whether you want to play with 4 Hurkyl's Recall or 4 Gutshot. The thing with 4 Gutshot is that it's a great card against a slew of other decks. You can bring it in against like Bank Control and Death and Taxes. And you can bring it in against Merfolk, Affinity. You could bring a few... Abzan Company. It comes in against a ton of decks. Hurkyl's Recall is basically coming in against Affinity, Lantern Control, Tron sometimes. So yeah, it's that's all that we have to offer for Hurkyl's Recall. So that's up to you. I'd go down the Hurkyl's Recall route myself. For Infect, we're just gonna have to do our best with like Dismember and Dispel, and we don't got a lot. Honestly, we don't got a lot here. It's the deck is not well tuned for Infect, and if you had the 4 gut shots, you'd be in very, very, very good shape for Infect. But I just want to throw that out there, throw my list out. If you want to play with Merfolk, I would suggest playing with something like this. I'm going to put that in the description below if you want to copy and paste the list. I'm sorry I don't have a sideboard guide, I just don't have the time to make one, but hopefully the list will carry you there. So this has been Nikachu showing the list that I think you should play at Grand Prix San Antonio.